We could all stand for the pledge. Walter, if you could lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could have a moment of silence for Mr. Mike Appling Sr., Mr. Greg Hovey, and Miss Barbara Hyatt. Thank you.
Secretary turns off.
And for those that would like to comment to the council and the public, please, Walter, do you have the list, please?
Yes, I do. Nancy?
And this is all good. I love it. I just love, you are a team, you are wonderful. And thank you. Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? All right.
I can hear you.
So this is good. I'm really, really excited, and I'm more excited that this podium is here. This has made my month. It's great. So we can talk to everyone. It's wonderful. So to begin, okay. So the solar, Kenilwood Solar, and of course that's why I'm here once again. So I'm looking through my calendar, and I realized, not counting all the meetings, I attended 36 meetings and made no impact. And with the Siting Council approving this now, I just feel like, gosh, one person, 36 meetings, countless hours. And I'm not saying they were all commission meetings. They were personal meetings. They were meetings with little groups, with Rescue Candlewood Mountain. But tons and tons of time going up to New Britain to the meetings, going to the Siting Council meetings, and it didn't make an impact. And it bothers me. It bothers me that I went to the commissions, didn't get support that I asked for over and over and over. And, it just didn't seem right. And I'm really hoping that you can do something to help out here. I have a business, not my business, it's Carl's business, but I run a business at Candlelight Farms. We had a fire a couple of weeks ago. And this is just not helping. The solar thing is just, I'm really nervous about the way the business will be going. And I think it will have an impact. And it will certainly have an impact on my well-being, on what's going on right next to my house. And I still don't know who's protecting my house, who's protecting the property, who's protecting the property values, and all of that. I still don't have answers to that. And it makes me nervous. I see people coming up and seeing the signs, and I know we put the signs on the mountain that say Rescue Candlewood Mountain. And people know that it has passed, that it's going to happen if we allow it to happen. So I'm just here again, 37th meeting, and to just ask for help. That's all. And thank you for everything. You always do. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. Carl?
My name is Carl Dunham. I live at 195 Candlewood Mountain Road. And like Nancy, I've been involved in this project that's been proposed. We ended up what happened was that your prior council really opened the door to this project, because what happened was they came to the council and said, without your support, we cannot afford to go forward. And therefore, there was a lot of machinations to it, but ultimately a pilot agreement was passed by this council. That pilot agreement did something that was just beyond belief. It gave essentially a 20-year abatement on taxes for a particular project. This is unheard of. No one has ever gotten that. And it reduced probably the taxes that would be paid by it by probably 2/3. So that's what they said they needed. And in an effort to try to given an opportunity, the council passed it. The council never had an opportunity to talk as to the project itself. And it went through various machinations. The zoning commission actually held a public hearing, and the zoning commission found that it was not in the best interest of the town, violated it, and the public that spoke there were overwhelmingly against it. So it was pretty well recorded there. We prepared a petition, which was signed by approximately 800 people. Not all were from New Milford, but they were around here. We created Rescue Candlewood Mountain, which ultimately had over 100 members. And Lisa Osgrove, who I'm sorry, she said she can't be here tonight. She has a family problem. Was very active, and I was active, and there were a great number of us. And we actually went to the point of filing as a party, much as the town did, and I went to all the meetings. And very honestly, I was very troubled by it. I can tell you, general gist of things is the siting council doesn't care about us. If we don't speak up and address the issues, they blow us over. The most recent interesting thing was, finally, in the beginning, the town really wasn't that active. I think it was a direction that they should sit back and just wait and see. Thank God when this new administration came in, they looked at it and they said, we got to do something about it. And the town council, John Tauer, wrote a beautiful brief. But the problem was they'd already decided. If you look at their minutes, on December 7th, when we were supposed to get the briefs in by the 14th, they had a straw vote approving it. So it's like it doesn't make any difference. Whatever you say, whatever you do. The DEP, of all people, were against it. They filed a motion against having them go forward with it. It should be filed under the current statute. And, of course, they rejected that. They rejected it because the chairman had already made a position on it back in March, because he didn't like that law. So they just go forward and do whatever they want to do. And the joke of it is this does nothing for us. The reason why the DEP was against it and never voted for it was that it didn't provide economic energy for Connecticut. They didn't even like it. What happened was 2 other states went ahead and said, well, we think we ought to have it, and you can have it in your town or your state. And that's how we got to where we are. So now we have this thing in front of us, and it's imperative that the town take an appeal in order to have a seat at the table. They will just blow you over. There's one more step that goes that they have to provide, which is the storm management plan. But like everything else, they don't seem to pay attention to anybody.
Carl, you're at 4 minutes, please.
Okay, so I urge you that for the sake of the town of New Milford, that you do something to protect Candlewood Mountain. Candlewood Mountain is an important recess for the entire town. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does it work?
Yep, sure does. Good evening. First thing I'd like to say is Happy New Year to all of you folks. I hope you had a good holiday season, and it's good to see everyone here, and look forward to having a good year. What I give before you tonight is just a small snapshot of some of the line items the Board of Education presented to the Town Council for the 17-18 year. Now, if you would look at all the highlights, that's the percentage increase that the Board of Education requested. Now, in the 16-17 year, if the Town Council and the Finance Department had approved a 100% increase on each one of those amounts, and for the 17-18 year, the town of New Milford would have saved $346,103. But some of these line items, like repair and instructional speech, on page 59, they requested a 3,334% increase. And that's astronomical number. There's other items back on page, the third page, where you'll see supplies and maintenance for Northfield Elementary School, 2,643%. You got Sarah Noble Middle School for the same, 1845, and you got Scaticoke, 2,251. Those are astronomical increases, and the Town Council and the Board of Finance approved that. So my train of thought is to make sure that when these are all presented to you and you sit down and look at them, ask for a justification of an increase of that size. To me, I cannot see it. If they just doubled what they had in the 16-17 year, I believe that they would have been able to get by just fine. And I know that the school population is relatively stagnant, and then I'm sure it's going to reduce again next year, because I don't see anything that would indicate that the school population is going to increase. So I'd like to know why the Board of Education will be able to justify any increase this year. I'd also want an answer to how they can ask for raises, and how we're going to maintain the teachers like this if they continue to get raises. Also, the note at the bottom of the page, 684 families in Litchfield County alone sold their homes and moved out of state last year. That's a large number of families that left just Litchfield County. So we have to start taking a serious look at how we spend our money, because it affects everybody. And just a note, for the last 3 years, my Social Security income has been $1,622 a month, and in the new year coming ahead, it's going to be $1,622 a month, because the government didn't give us an increase again this year. So I'm asking you to take all that into consideration when you sit down and you look over the Board of Education's line items for increases or whatever they need to try to run their business for the next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that's it.
Thank you. Next, moving on to Mayor's remarks. First, kind of a little bit on the people that we kind of memorialized that did the community, that helped the community in a lot of ways that have passed. The one being Miss Barbara Hyatt. She was a former registrar for New Milford, active in the community, and we will miss her. Mr. Mike Appling Sr., involved in the sports community, umpire, wonderful man. I knew both of these people very well myself, and he will be missed very much with the community. Also, Mr. Greg Hovey worked for the town, family man, also is involved in the sports community and the community at large, and he will be missed. So I just think it's nice that we memorialize these three people, especially in the beginning of the new year. Next, on some good things, some good notes. Makes our community what it is. So the first one I'd like to do is we did a proclamation for a Miss Ruth Golden Katz. She turns 100 years old today. God bless. Amazing. So Ruth began working in her store in the Golden Family Store, which used to be way back in the day, right on Railroad Street, her and her family. I spoke to her nephew who came in today to pick up the proclamation, because Ruth is down in the city and was in the city, and her nephew said, well, I'm going to get the mayor of New York to do a proclamation. Don't want it. Don't want it. Okay, well, we'll get the governor. Don't want it. Well, let me call the town of New Milford. I want that. So we were able to do the proclamation. She was very ecstatic. He was very ecstatic. Just goes to show New Milford's still in her blood, and she's 100 years old. So God bless Miss Ruth Golden Katz. Next, I want to talk about some amazing things that we do that maybe we overlook in town. So first, I want to talk about over the Thanksgiving, wonderful thing, our Greater New Milford Women's Club, our Western Connecticut United Way, the Easley family, Coldwell Banker, gave a bounty of food that actually served 1,020 neighbors in need. Also, through our social services department, we had our sibling shopping spree. It enabled over 240 kids to choose from gifts for their brothers and sisters. We also had the Santa Fund. The Santa Fund and Gift Group provided gifts and clothing for over 490 local kids. 65 disabled adults were also given small presents with gift certificates. As Peg says, this Herculean task could not have been accomplished without the help of many of our community members. They would be our local businesses, churches, civic groups, schools, neighborhoods that did it together, and town employees. That's all about New Milford right there. Just the community pulling together for wonderful, worthwhile endeavors. So I thank everyone involved for that. On behalf of the community, a wonderful thing. Also, kind of as I'm just going back and forth, and I apologize for that, not in any rhyme nor reason, but also want to thank the New Milford Health Department, and that would also be Mike Crespin and his staff. He's able to kick off radon testing and awareness program today. So they partnered with the Connecticut Department of Public Health. They received 30 radon test kits. They're going to be distributing them to residents, providing radon awareness information for the month of January. So it's wonderful that we're giving those to those in need, especially those that may have a radon issue, because that's something that can impact everyone's health. Also, I'd like to thank Kathy Castaneda. We're having a housing workshop. This will be on our social media sites and also on our website. It's providing a housing workshop open to the public, talking about discussions regarding options available for housing here in New Milford, which I've heard from quite a few people that there is a definite need for that. We're going to obtain input from the community regarding desired housing options for all ages and all incomes. We're going to be taking all that information and using that towards our plan of conservation and development. So I thank Kathy that's Thursday, February 15th, 7 p.m. at the Pettibone Community Center cafeteria. Also, we years ago decided to do the pharmacy, the PRO Act, which was the prescription discount cards that the public had been allowed to partake in. And this started under Mayor Murphy. So I'd like to thank her on her behalf for starting this. Since its inception of this program, the residents have saved $93,199.40. So for that, thank you. Next, I'd also like to thank the Hidden Treasures Park Community Subcommittee and Kathy Castaneda. They were able to receive a grant for Hidden Treasures Park for the canoe and kayak portage areas of $8,500. So great job, amazing. Here's some real good news as well. So we have what's called the New Milford Community Fuel Bank, and that's for people that need fuel in need. They don't have the funds to get whatever propane, oil, or whatever they need to heat their homes. The town has been very generous in the community in raising funds. So the good news is, since Christmas, we've raised $30,000 plus 1,050 gallons of fuel. So here's some people that really made a difference. First, someone anonymous, and God bless them, $20,000. Outstanding. So whoever you are, God bless you. The Kent Singers, they raised $1,000, and the Kent Community Foundation matched it Well, actually gave them $750. We were able, through our party, to raise over $1,200 to the mayor's office. And then we had miscellaneous $7,000. They've also asked oil companies to contribute. Some gave money, and that was included in the miscellaneous total. And then the total they also gave was the 1,050 gallons of deliverable fuel. So it's just amazing when the community pulls together. This is what you get. It's excellent. So I want to thank everyone involved in that. Now kind of moving into some other things that may not be so smiling and positive, but they're good things, I think, for the town moving forward. First, I'd like to just report to our council and to you, the public, that we've been meeting with our Board of Education partners in looking at the $2.3 million shortfall that this town received when Governor Malloy decided to reduce our state revenues. So we're working with them to come up with a solution. We've also been working with our department heads to find ways to come up with that shortfall. I've instructed the department heads, and I've told the Board of Ed that we will not be giving a supplemental tax increase. So we're going to find ways to make it work this year. So I want to thank so far our department heads, our Board of Education partners. We're all looking and working hard, and I'll report back to you and the town council at the next meeting as well, where we're moving forward. So that's my remarks for tonight. I want to thank everyone again on the council and the public, wishing everyone a happy and constructive new year. Thank you. Next, approval of the prior minutes. I have a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Dr. Muller.
There are two things I just wanted to ask about in these minutes. On page 3, about halfway down, it starts a paragraph with Greg Ossipow, Director of Finance.
Yes, sir.
I just want to get this clarified. Is he the acting director or the director?
He's the acting director right now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think it's important to have that in the minutes because the director of finance, I believe, has to be approved by the town council. So I think we need to change that so it's clear. On page 6, top of the page, just going through Robert's Rules of Order, they are a little specific about amendments to a motion. And you actually have to vote on what's we consider a friendly amendment. And there was no vote on that. I think that issue has to be brought up at our next meeting. I hope it's on the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion? Mr. Skelly.
It's a friendly amendment on the who was present and absent. Mayor Pete Bass.
What page? I'm sorry.
Front page.
Front page,
The mayor was out having surgery, so just to add that
Okay.
absent in the front page.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the approval of the minutes? All those in favor? Oops.
Did you make a friendly amendment to
No,
that?
I'm asking for a correction.
Okay.
This is not an amendment. This would be a correction to the minutes.
Okay.
And my correction would be on,
The
I'm sorry, page 3. After Greg Ossipow, it should be Acting Director of Finance. It shouldn't be Director of Finance. And I'm making a request to the Mayor's office that we revisit
At the next meeting.
that motion, because if there is by Robert's Rules of Order is my point, a friendly amendment should have actually a vote on it. Just to go a little step further, if it's something like a correction to spelling, the chair can just kind of oversee that in both Robert's Rules of Order and Sturgis Rules of Order. You can do that.
If it's a punctuation that is not pertaining to changing the meaning, that's the stuff that can be done. But if beyond that, it actually has to be voted on. So I'd like to see that at the next meeting, please.
So we have to vote on your, on page 3.
And page 6.
If you vote,
No, page 6 is just a comment.
Right,
Page
if you
3, we actually have to change it.
and Mike, if you voted,
Well, it's a
if you
correction,
voted,
so if you vote for
in favor,
minutes,
you
you're
vote for
voting
the
for that
correction.
correction.
What about Doug's friendly amendment? That needs a motion?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Doug's friendly amendment, does that need a vote? No?
It's just a correction.
just a correction.
Okay.
If you vote for the minutes, you're accepting those
Yeah,
corrections.
okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, Mr. Pillow.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, Tom Pillow, Chairman of the Milford Pension Committee. I've done this for almost 20 years, involved with the evolution of the pension committee. I had requested, and Greg Valero has been great in help and providing a lot of help with making copies of getting to the council members of the actuary. That was July 1 of 2017. And the fund statement that shows the actual assets and how they're broken down for your review. I think it's very important you have that. Also, all pension committee members have that available to them. We've had several meetings and we meet during the day, and it's been difficult for some members, and I respect that. But we had pension advisors and the investment advisors come from out of state. Plus we need the staff there. So meetings are pretty much tied to during the day. So it's been difficult getting a quorum, and I understand that. But we followed through and advised the staff. They've done a beautiful job.
What do they do here? Up the microphone. Oh.
I got too much paperwork to be done. Where's this got to go?
Just put it on the desk, you don't need to get it right now.
Okay. Hi there, we're good. Thank you. Sorry. Just very briefly, because it's very complex. The pension asset in 2010, I gave you a copy of the front page of the 210 actuarial. To 2017, the plan grew an asset value from 28 million to 60 million. And within that range, in 2012, we culled out $1.7 million and left it with John Hancock, the original actuary and plan advisor. The committee, back in 2012, met dozens of times, interviewed a lot of actuaries and advisors, and we went with Angel Pension and Principal Financial. And they've done a spectacular job for the town and growth of the plan asset. The committee has worked assiduously on the town's pension issues, past, present, and future, and have an obligation to pursue their mandate with due diligence. And the committee's done that. Very proud to be part of the committee. Very proud to work with Greg and his predecessors. And I have to say, I had a great rapport with Lee Palmer, who I thought his HR experience, human resource, was phenomenal. And a lot of his recommendations I would like to see brought forth with Greg in future negotiations to help sustain the plan. Lee had great HR experience, and I respected him highly for that. And you'll get to know that as negotiations take place, and Greg has all that information. So with contracts that are coming forward and into the future, it's going to be very important what Lee provided. He had great HR experience. I respected him highly for that. In the pension, currently, the pension ARC, which is the annual recommended contribution, has been going down. Last year it went down from the prior year, and this year is down from the 17-18 budget cycle, which is a good thing. So if you're budgeting 2.6 million and you're paying out 3.2, where are you getting the 500,000 difference? It's coming out of the growth of the plan asset. So the plan asset is the largest single liquid asset this town has. If you think about the 60 million, you could liquidate it tomorrow, but sell all the stocks in the portfolio you're in. That's the largest single liquid asset this town has. So if you think about it, it's a large sum of money. And what it basically does is it takes the pressure off the annual contribution, plus gives some security to the pension, because otherwise you'd be in a pay-go system. You need $4 million next year, you budget $4 million. You need 5 the following year, you budget 5. It takes that annual pressure off. But if you look at 2.7 million that you're going to budget, 2.696 I think it is, but let's call it 2.7 for walking around money. That's almost 1 net mil. A net mil is a little more than 2.8. So if you take 1 mil on 27 plus mils, that's almost a 4% of that total mill rate of 27.75. That's pension. So everybody's tax bill, 4% of your taxes go to cover the annual recommended contribution. You do your own math. You pay $5,000 a year in your home, 4% of that feeds the pension obligation. If it wasn't for the pension plan and its growth, it would be even higher. And I'll get into the OPEB trust and OPEB benefits under the GASB laws in a few minutes. That's another issue that you need to be fully cognizant of. But we've had growth in the system. We've had tremendous employees, and they retired, and you fill the position. So the last time I made a presentation, a couple of years ago, there was 686. Today there's 748 as of July 1 of 2017. So it grows. So when it retires, you fill a position. You feed both actuarial on the retired person and on the person that's being employed. Currently, you got about a $20 million payroll, $19+ million payroll that's involved with this pension. And all various machinations of pension obligations, depending on union contracts, and that all has to be looked at very seriously in the future. And Greg has the background and knowledge to deal with that. You know, the committee's done a lot of work over the years to make sure that that asset is solid. That's, otherwise, to keep up with the pressures of contracts, you'd have to invest in every planet in the solar system to keep up with this. So while we went from 28 million to 60 million in a 7-year window, which is beautiful, you still have an unfunded liability. And we're not ignoring it, we're amortizing it over a 15-year period. So we're 84% funded. So the unfunded liability, we're not ignoring it, we're funding it over a 15-year period. Plus, the committee recommended and followed through with the discount rate. No one makes 8% every year. That's how the plan evolved. When this plan evolved, it was 8%. The state's 8.5%. That's absurd. No one gets an 8% rate of return on their investment every year. So we tweaked the discount rate down. We're down to 7.5%. And over time, I would like to see, and speak for myself, get down to 5.5%. But every time you tweak it down, you put more upward pressure on the annual contribution. So you got to have a little bit of balance. Last year, Lee froze it at 7.5% because of the uncertainty in revenue from the state, and we didn't need to hire our contribution. So even with the 7.5% discount rate, the annual contribution that you have to put in your budget is down. The town has always been, and continues to be, very responsible in funding their obligation. But it's nice to have a $60 million liquid asset to back up all the promises and contractual obligations. It not only gives the taxpayer the security, it gives the employees the security that their pension has some backing to it. Because, you know, the cities in the country that went Chapter 9 bankruptcy, pension may have gone right with it. So the Milford has been very solid and responsible in funding their obligation. There's a lot to go over in the detail of this. That would be hours. So that's why I want to just make it very brief and give you the highlights of it. And any questions you have on investments that we're doing, the actuarial, and I'm a numbers nut. So when it comes to actuary, I missed school that day. Yeah, it's a different science when you talk to the actuaries. You know, they base it on a lot of assumptions. I base it on what's in the bank. And right now you're solid. And we have a breakdown of the portfolio and how it's invested. And the graphic illustration. So the pension is doing very well. And it's this is what you received. I made sure everyone got a copy of the valuation. If you look through it, you'll see those that are employee status, those who are being paid a pension, those who have disability, those who have their wife's spousal, it's all on here. Then you look at the 0 to 35 plus years of contribution, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and you see a lot of employees in that 25 to 35 year range. You know they're going to be coming on board soon. Whether they meet the rule of 84 or 85, and they're in a contractual obligation to the town as far as retirement, you're going to see that sector come on. And when they come on pension, you rehire. So before you know it, from 748 participants, you're going to be over 800 someday. Not too long. It happens. It comes down to one thing, sustainability. And the second and most important thing comes down to contractual obligations. You need to look at them very carefully in the near future and what you can sustain and still be fair to the employee. I've always, and I tease the actuaries, I tell them they live in the world of voodoo numbers. They base it on assumptions. I base it on reality. And while assumptions on growth are there, if you look back at what the discount rate was back when it started, you're never going to get 8% every year continually. So we're going to get away, like I said, we're going to get away from that. And we're very pleased with the pension advisors, Angel Pension and Principal Financial. They've done a great job since they've taken over in 2012 from John Hancock. John Hancock, the evolution of that went back to 1964, when it was a one-shoe-fit-all plan. From there, you got a closet full of shoes now. There's all different sizes through negotiations. So what was a one-shoe-fit-all became machinations of all kind of contractual obligations. And over the years, what the committee saw in the early days was John Hancock really wasn't getting into what I call the legalese. And I went in myself personally and I did more of a forensic. If you want to know how much fuel you need from me, I want to know how many pistons you got in your engine. And that's what you had to do. You had to go back and forensically look at what was driving it and all the contract obligations. And the legalese I wasn't happy with John Hancock. So the committee at the time, and the committee put a lot of time in, decided to move from John Hancock to another investment advisor. And we interviewed about a dozen firms over a period of time. And those members that are now in pay status, when I say pay status, they're collecting a pension, some wanted to stay with John Hancock. So we had to take $1.7 million out of the asset and leave that with John Hancock. So when you look at the growth from 210 to today, you got to add $1.7 million on there. That came out. It came from someplace. So that's it with pension. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer. Yes?
Yeah, and I apologize, there's no page number on this, but on the page that talks about the determination of the discount rate, there's a table that talks about the target asset allocations and long-term expected rate of return, but it's not completed in terms of the split domestic, international, et cetera. Is that data somewhere else?
Yeah, that may be on this other. Forgive me for all the paperwork here.
No worries.
Let me see what you're talking about.
Asset allocation, calculation, discount rate.
Yeah, the discount rate is 7.5. It is today. Like I said, we started at 8. The asset allocation, targeted asset allocation, long-term expected real rate of return. They don't know that. It's if you look at the fund sheet that I handed to you, that you could see the actual dollars that were gained in each investment.
Oh, is that in that packet or this packet?
The other packet.
The other one? Okay, thank you.
And you're looking at, this is not the pension.
Okay.
This is not the pension, this is the OPEB. And I'll explain that in a moment.
All right, thanks.
That's the OPEB trust. Everything in government has an acronym. And let me just speak briefly about the OPEB. In 2006, the statute required municipalities to create what is called an OPEB trust, other post-employment benefit. If you look at your audit, there's two forms of OPEB. There's OPEB with the retired police, and then there's OPEB, which is retired teachers. And that all gets tied into your ISF fund, Internal Service Fund, which I did. I had a graphic illustration done. I did graphically, and had somebody do it on a computer for me. In 2006, the statutes, and it was always a red flag in the town's audit report, required towns to create what is called an OPEB trust to fund the future medical benefit for retired police, other post-employment benefit. Towns were not doing it. Towns were funding it, through their medical insurance fund, but they didn't create a trust so that you could fund that trust, so that that trust has just like a pension. So when they retire and they have the post-employment benefit of medical, which they pay a COBRA payment, which has gone up since that time, because it has to. Medical is a demonstrative cost, and I'll get to that in a second. The town at the time, at the request of the auditors, I went to the auditors and the former director of finance, Ray Jankowski, and met with Joe Fozzi, bond counsel, came up with the concept of who's going to be trustees of a trust. So we went to a town meeting and changed the pension committee to be not only members of the pension committee, but also trustees of the OPEB trust. So Fozzi was happy with it. The auditors were happy with it. It met the state statute on the trust. And what we did was, at the time, Frank Weber and I both signed the deposit slip with Ray, and we put $600,000 of the Internal Service Fund money, which is the medical, into the OPEB trust. Now, if you look at OPEB liability, and it's in your audit, it's under the Gadsby accounting and all, if you look at the post-employment benefit of medical for police and teachers, and they contribute, COBRA, depends on contractual obligations of what they contribute. If you look at that unfunded liability, it's $15 million on medical. Now, you're servicing it through the ISF. You're servicing it through the ISF. That's why I did this graphic illustration, to show that in the Internal Service Fund, start with the taxpayers up here. As you come down, you got Board of Ed medical, town medical, you got the employee co-insurances, town and Board of Ed, and then you got the Board of Ed COBRA payment, and the town COBRA payments. And it all comes down into the Internal Service Fund. And then what I did was, out of the Internal Service Fund, we had the OPEB trust, which goes back into the fund again. What the finance directors are doing is funding everything through the ISF. But if you look at the unfunded liability, and it's in the town's report from the auditors, there is a $15 million unfunded liability in the medical. You've been meeting that liability by paying the bills every year, but they're saying you should have that money put aside for that liability exposure. Just like the pension. If you didn't have the $60 million, whatever our contribution is, put it in your budget. It's a pay-go system. So the medical has been kind of a pay-go system. But when you go under the Gadsby accounting laws, General Accounting Board laws, different game. So if you look at the audit report, that unfunded liability is sitting there to the tune of $15 million. It's called medical. Now, if you look at your budget and you take medical, I think it's around $12 million. Budget, and pension, let's call it $3 million. So you get $15 million on a $102 million budget, you're 15%. So if you take the $15 million, which is net, because there's no federal state offset to that, if you take the $15 million, and what the net value of a mill is, it's 5.5 mils. 5.5 mils on 27.75 mils is 20%. So 20% of everybody's tax bill is funding medical and pension costs for the town. So if you pay $5,000 a year, $1,000 of your tax bill goes for those two items, because there's no offset, like there is with educational cost sharing and other grants the town gets. That's dead red. So if you look at what you're budgeting and what the mill rate value is, a net mill, which is 2.8 and change, you're 5.5 mils. 5.5 on 27.75, you're 20%. So 20% of everybody's tax bill is going towards medical and pension costs for the town. That's where we're at. That's how you look at it. And again, the town's been very responsible. I don't care who the administration is, been always responsible in funding it appropriately. But under, like I said, the Gadsby accounting system, that should have $15 million in a special trust for those two OPEB benefits, teachers and police. We did it for the police, but if you look at the audit report, you'll see two forms of OPEB, teachers and police, because the teachers, retired teachers, are on the town's insurance. They just pay a culvert. And the way the insurance is set up, we have a single limit liability, and then we get an aggregate. And that's why there's a 20% medical reserve. So 20% over what is budgeted, or 120%, once you go use all that up, then a catastrophic kicks in. But on an individual basis, it's 150,000. Used to be 100, it moved up to 150. The experiences and all. But that's big exposure, tremendous exposure. I don't care what business you're in. Government's a service business, but it's a tremendous exposure. What I like to do, if I may, just pass this out. Just pass it out for everybody. If you have questions in the future regarding the town's ISF, I even gave it to the Board of Education a while back because they weren't sure how the ISF worked. But whatever you budgeted goes into the ISF. If there's fortunately a surplus, it stays in the ISF. But you must maintain 20% of your budgeted claims in any given year. And remember, on claims, you got a 60-day rollout. So it's not just a fiscal year, it's all of July and all of August. That experience comes back in. So, and if there's a residual left, unfortunately, if there's money's in excess from claims, which is a good thing, stays in the ISF. And over the years, I've seen where some of ISF has been taken from the ISF fund and put in as an offset to the budgeted claims for medical, as a little bit of a relief. So once you have beyond that 20%, you say, okay, we have, let's call it 500,000 above that. Let's take 250 of that and put it in as a revenue offset, a transfer in offset. It's not revenue, transfer in to offset our medical budget to reduce the impact of taxpayers. Very important. These two items are crucial. In a very, very abridged, and I wanted to keep it very abridged, not to bore everyone, the actuary report speaks for itself. You can see each one of them and how many retired, disabled, beneficiaries, disabled members, terminated, vested, and active. And you can see that the aggregate of those numbers are going up. And you know, many, many good employees in the town, and you want to be fair to them, but you also got to look at affordability and what the taxpayer can manage. So the committee has done a lot of work over the years. The committee's put a lot of time in. And the staff's been phenomenal. The success of this would not have happened without staff, current and future and past, and the ideas that have been brought forth by the staff. And I know Greg's got a lot of great ideas and a lot of ideas that Lee Palmer had with HR experience that he had that should be considered in future contracts. And that will alleviate a lot of the upward financial pressure that's placed on these plans. And to be fair to employees too, you know. You want good employees, so you got to treat them fair, but you got to look at affordability. That's tough formula. Let me see. That's about it, without getting into super detail. And I don't want to keep the mayor and the council here all night, but I'm very pleased that the plan asset grew in a 7-year period from a 28 million to 60 million and grown. I'm very pleased with the discount rate going down, that the annual contribution you have to fund is less and not more. And too many towns could say that they have to fund less this year than last year on pension. It's usually the other way around, you fund more. The OPEB, as you read the town audit, and I look at the town audit very forensically, that OPEB is a big unfunded liability. You're meeting your obligation on paying, but the unfunded liability. So what they're saying is, you need to have $15 million in an investment portfolio so it gets some growth to it, take that pressure off. Very, very hard to do. Very hard to do. But it's part of the GASB accounting system and what the state requires. So you're aware of it. And Lisa, what you showed me was the OPEB liability, or the insurance. That's the OPEB. And if you look at it, there's a $15.7 million liability, fiduciary net position. We have about 700 grand in it, 669, in that OPEB trust. So the net liability is 15 million. Because the medical is a very, not as costly as it is today, like a fraction, and medical benefits were given out. Then over time, medical got crazy.
So, Tommy, what do you recommend to start trying to fund that?
What we're doing is, what I recommended to Greg Ossipo, and it's just my recommendation personally, is each year put a little bit into the OPEB trust, which is the post-employment benefit of the police. I think the teachers pay 100% of COBRA. The former police officers, I'll give you an example, the ones that have been retired some time now, only paid 10% of COBRA. So let's say their COBRA was, for a single police officer, was, let's call it $15,000 a year. They only paid $1,500 a year to you. But you had exposure up to $150,000. I mean, in my world, I'm not going to take your $1,500 and be exposed for $150. That don't work. And I was absent that day in school too. But you got to look at that. Medical was a very, like I said a moment ago, medical was an insignificant cost. And I can go back into the early 90s when I was on the council. Medical was a fraction of what it is today. And medical was given away as a benefit because it wasn't a big cost. And you want to be fair to the employee. Now it's astronomical. It's up through the roof. So it's like everything else, you know. So my recommendation is that each year a little more is put into that OPEB trust. And if you look at the graphic illustration that I had created, you can see the OPEB trust is down here. That goes in and out of the ISF. The ISF's really paying everything. It's not going into the OPEB, getting paid out of the OPEB back into the ISF, the way it really should be, but to make life and bookkeeping a lot easier, everything's being paid out of the ISF, Internal Service Fund.
So how much would you recommend?
$100,000 a year, just
something that's.
Well, it shows the auditors that you're making a contribution. You know, and then when they do the final audit report, you know, they make a note of that. So that's a positive move. But everything's got to come down to contract language. And when I looked at a lot of the, and I'm not an attorney, when I looked at a lot of the legalese, there's a lot of that to be left up to interpretation. You know, if you ask the same question 5 times, you get 6 different answers. And if you look at a lot of the legal, they got to be cleaned up a little bit. And Greg's aware of a lot of that. Very important. Anything else?
Any other questions for Mr. Phil?
One more. In the pension plan valuation packet, I'm looking at 2 pages. One says the actuarial value versus the market value.
Yeah.
Should it be of a concern as a person looking for the numbers for the first time that the market value is less than the expected actuarial value of the assets? The expected actuarial value is just over 55 million, but the market value for the same snapshot is 53 million. Do we need to think about that?
No, that's the voodoo I was telling you about. What the actuaries look at in the growth rate, normal growth rate over time. I would just look at market value.
Because the actuarial value discount rate is too aggressive?
Yes,
to your earlier comment?
way too aggressive.
Okay.
Way too aggressive. You know, if you get a plan year, it's where your net return after expense is 3.9%, and you got your discount rate is 7.5. It was 8. You got an unfunded liability. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Phil? Dr. Mills.
Slide over a little bit so I can see Mr. Bill. Thank you. First of all, Tommy, thanks for all the time you put into
Thank
this.
you. Thank you.
I am going to ask you one thing. I understand the meetings you have with the actuaries and so forth occur during the day because they're coming from out of state.
Right.
But there hasn't been a quorum of the pension committee for
a long time. I know.
So I'm going to just ask as a favor, if you would, after the actuaries come in, if you could get the pension committee together for a quorum meeting,
Sure.
I think that would be beneficial. Okay. Thank you. Secondly, I just want one thing, just so I understand. I was looking at some numbers of audits. When I was first on the town council, the pension was funded 101%.
Right.
This was in 04.
Correct.
The audit of 04. And in 08 it was 89, and in 14 it was 82, and the 16 audit was 73%. Is that mostly the OPEB, or is that other issues causing it to go from 101 down to 73?
That has nothing to do with the OPEB.
Okay.
What that is, in the market meltdown of 2008, we dropped from the 101% of funded asset. Like everyone else, that took a big hit, and it took a long time to come back. We're 84% funded, but you gotta keep in mind, over that same period of time, more people retired, more people got hired. So that's a big part of that equation. That's why, like I said earlier, the unfunded liability, we're amortizing that. We're not ignoring it. But even with doing all that, the contractual pressures that are placed on this plan are immense. And we just had for example, good people. I mean, a police officer retired, 32 dedicated years, decided to take his full contribution. What the police negotiated, and I would take us back into the 90s, they contribute 6%, and they get it back with 5.5% interest. Well, if you're only getting 3.5% rate of return, I'm not giving you 5.5. So he elected to take his full amount of contribution for a slightly lesser pension benefit. That was his decision to make. But that contribution that came out was in an aggregate of $195,000. That came out of the plan asset. Big hit.
But you feel this amortized will, I guess I'm concerned about that we're ever going to catch up, is my concern.
Very hard, because you could catch up over the time. You got to look at your contracts.
Oh, there's no question.
The obligations is what's driving it. And if you look at the various machinations of contractual obligations, everybody's got a different formula. You know, like I said earlier, it went from one shoe fit all to everybody's got their contractual obligations through union negotiations.
There's a conceptual question here.
Sure.
When you're talking about contracts, will there ever be a time, private industry has gone this way,
Sure.
where we eventually go to 401ks for employees?
What I would ask you to consider looking forward, you're going to have to grandfather in everybody that's already entered his date.
Oh, you'd have to start with new employees.
Yeah, start with new employees and just start off with, because you take whatever percentage of that $20 million payroll, $19+ million payroll, new employees, if you say, okay, we're going to contribute 4% or 5% each year of their payroll into a 401k, and that's your investment. And over time, the curve will go favorably towards the town. But the first half a dozen years, your contribution is going to go up a little bit. Because you're still funding the old.
Oh, yeah.
And you're still putting that 5% in of the new.
Short term it's tough, long term it's good.
Yeah, short term it's going to be a little tough.
So,
but long
back to my
term,
conceptual question, is it ever going to happen?
It's up to this legislative body.
Legislative body.
What I recommend you seriously, and Greg got a lot of great ideas, is in negotiations that are coming forth in the near future, that you look seriously at doing a lot of changes.
Excuse me if I may. Just
Sure.
one last question, Tom.
Sure.
The audit I looked at for 16, June 30th, 16, we're funded 73%. I thought I heard you say 84%.
Yeah, it's 84% funded. Which is, are you talking about the town audit or the audit evaluation?
The town audit that came out at the end of it's actually the last audit we actually had.
Yeah, I disagree with that number. The actuaries got 84%.
Because the audit had it 73.
Yeah, I know. Lee Palmer told me that. But right on your 7117, it's 84%.
All right. I'd like to have that clarified. All right, thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you. Any
Thanks,
other
Tom.
questions? Thank you again, Mr. Pillow, for
Thank
all
you.
your hard
Thank you
work.
very much, Tom.
Very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to take a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're going to go into executive session for a few moments, and then we'll,
Are you back in session or no?
okay. Came back from executive session, no votes, nor motions were taken. Next, I'd like to move on, discussion and possible action regarding the Riverfront Revitalization Committee request of $1,000 for a recording secretary. Kathy, is Kathy still here? So, Kathy, if you could just come up for just a moment. Yep. Could someone,
I move that we take action for the Riverfront Revitalization Committee's request for $1,000 for recording secretary.
Second.
so just as a kind of discussion for the council, I was approached by the Riverfront Revitalization Committee. They're getting more in depth, as Kathy can state as well, more in depth on their plans, and they really need a recording secretary to document it for the public correctly. So they had asked the council if they could get $1,000. If so, I'd like to see if you could amend your motion to state the $1,000, if approved, would come from the account per the finance director.
Certainly.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
Mayor, what's the
Doctor?
time frame on this?
The $1,000
Yeah, well, how long?
to finish their term, which I
Their
believe is
term.
another 4 months, I
Okay,
believe.
thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Oh, Mike? Go ahead.
No, it's not on this motion, but in general, I mean, just as we head into budget time, I mean, as things come forward, people looking for money, and I'm not saying I'm against this one, but at what point do we start to say every little bit counts? And I mean, I know as you said, it's coming from another budget, so it's not really affecting the budget, but you know, other things could go to that budget. I just want to present that you know, eventually it's our job to also say no to certain things.
I agree. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is just a housekeeping item. So for the Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority, the HRRA.
So moved as presented in the.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is the discussion and possible action regarding the 2.0 million refunding 2008 bond resolution. What this is, the verbiage is here. We had Joe Fozzi, who is our bond counsel, come before the council to tell us about the bonding issue that was the ambulance barn. And what had happened was the bonding was done as a regular municipal bond, when in fact it should have been done because the New Milford Ambulance is a 501(c)(3). The bonding should have been done, Walter remembers, as that. Mr. Fozzi had spoken to the IRS, and the IRS has agreed to first, with a $2,500 penalty, waive the penalties for the rest of the town. So we have a $2,500 penalty we had to pay, which we're doing. And speaking with our bond counsel, by stating this resolution and the council agreeing to it, we have now the opportunity to then refinance these bonds, either within the next month or the next 2 months, looking to save probably a couple $100,000, according to Mr. Fozzi, just depending on the market at the time. But he needs this approved from council so that he would then have the authority, and the town would have the authority to refinance these bonds when it became prudent. So if someone could
So I
make that
move
motion.
to
Yes.
accept per the resolution as stated here on the agenda.
Dr.
Wait a
Miller?
second. Is there any way we could just, I mean, I'm glad you brought up the fact this ambulance issue. I guess if that was just included in the minutes, what the mayor just presented, that would be fine, just for the
To
record.
explain what it was
Right.
about, right?
Right.
Yeah, because that was,
I don't think
it was
has
last
to,
session.
I don't think it has to be part of this motion here, but if it could just be part of the minutes, so
Yes.
if anyone looks back at this, they could have a clear understanding.
Could we,
I don't think you have to change the motion.
can,
Not the added description.
Yeah.
I'm just asking the
Right.
secretary to make note of it in the minutes, that's all.
and could we make and also according to Mr. Fozzie, he asked if we weren't gonna read it in, if we could just state that we will waive it as well.
Okay, I'll amend my motion, make the motion to waive the reading, right, to waive the reading of the motion of the entitled resolution, and that its full text will be incorporated into the minutes of this meeting.
And I will continue my second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is Kathy Castaneda. If you could come back up, popular tonight. And we're starting first with the proposed change to the listed price of 82 Perry Drive. Thank you.
I have my prior one, I saved mine, thank you.
Oh, I want a colored one. Thank you.
Well, there's a color.
Thanks.
It's attached to your minutes.
It is, it's just not as nice.
You don't understand that? Black
So-
and white, right, thing? You don't understand?
Last year, you had agreed to list the property that the town owned on Perry Drive, 82 Perry Drive. It's a lot, a vacant lot, an improved subdivision. Agreed to list it for $50,000 at the recommendation of a real estate broker. And she's seen very little activity on it. As everybody probably knows, lots in the town just aren't moving. So she had recommended that we drop the price to $40,000 to be the most competitively priced lot in the subdivision. It is a nicer lot than some of the other ones, but if you look at the map around the rear of the property, that's the airport pipeline, goes to the back of the property. After about the front fourth of the property, it drops off very steeply. So she just thought that there were some concerns with the property. It's not a perfect lot, that it might help to sell it, get it off the books.
Kathy, how many times in the last, whenever it was first listed, went over a year now, right?
Less than a year.
How many people have looked at the property, do you know?
Last spring, she had someone that was pretty interested. She thought was going to make an offer, and they didn't. In November, she had someone else that was very interested, and she thought they'd make an offer, but hasn't heard anything back.
So two?
Yeah, two that were very interested, yeah.
And it's been the same agent the whole time, so
Right.
she would know.
Right.
No one's made an offer.
No one's made an offer, no.
What's making them nervous, the pipeline? I'd be nervous.
She brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be really nervous.
We wouldn't have to worry about rebuilding.
Any other? Doug?
Good question. I know that the town has a lot of properties on their books, and obviously tax money and stuff like that. Is ever doing an option an option to do that, to try to move a piece of property? Is that something viable as opposed to just a bid?
That would be, once you go to auction, that'd probably be after you tried as much as you could to use a real estate
Last year,
agent.
I went through the list of all the town-owned properties, and this was the most viable build on, like the one that really could be built on and sold. This was it. There are a few other random properties that the town took in a tax foreclosure maybe 20 years ago that are maybe all wetlands or just not great soils, but this was the best buildable lot. And then the other one is the Still Meadow property that the town is listing. Other than that, a lot of them are just drainage ditches or detention base. I mean, they're just not really buildable or saleable.
So you're saying there's only maybe a handful that are
Right.
that the town have that are
Really could be sold. Another one was the Church Street one that we looked at too. The town does have a lot of properties that taxes haven't been paid. So the town does the tax auctions on those every year. So I'm looking with the tax collector, looking at a bunch of those to maybe see if there's neighbors that are interested in those, and then we can let them know it's going up for auction. And the last tax auction they had, what was it, this summer, a few months back, they did very well. So it seems like people are starting to look at that more. So the town actually does try to get rid of those. the town doesn't take possession of the tax sale properties as much as they used to because of the liabilities that come with some of these properties.
Okay.
Kathy, I just want to confirm, because so that everyone in the public understands, that on Perry Drive, there are 2 other lots that have been for sale for quite some time, and although this one might, in some estimations, be a little more desirable, those 2 are priced closer to the $40,000 mark, and they too are still sitting.
Correct.
One is actually, the last one that sold for $39,000.
About a year ago, yeah.
Yeah. So, but they do not have the pipeline in the backyard.
Correct, but they're not as deep either.
Yeah, this is very thin, deep. So.
What?
Can we make a motion where we have reduce it to $40,000 for, let's say, 3 months, and then have it revisited after these 90 days to see if it was?
Yeah, I think the listing is probably up in about 3 months anyway,
Right.
So we could.
But I'm thinking usually a listing is like 6 months. Can we just say, hey, realtor, this is what we want to do. We want to do a 90-day, $40,000, make it happen, or otherwise come back to us and then let's get rid of it.
I think we listed it around April of last year. So I think we did a 1-year listing. So that's going to be up then anyway.
So it's just going to
So,
happen.
yeah.
So your answer to that is yes, we could drop it for 3 months and then revisit it.
Right, yeah, get a new agreement signed.
I'd like to make a motion that we consider lot at 82 Perry Drive, have our realtor drop the price down to $40,000 for a period of 3 months, and then revisit it with the council if it's still not sold.
I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Ken.
Next is the discussion of the Office of Early Childhood Development as it pertains to the town of New Milford and the New Milford Children's Center. So in your packet, I believe, is it in there? It's not? Okay. So the Office of Early Childhood Development had told the town of New Milford that they were concerned with vital information that was passed out to the newspaper that was in violation of their personal information, which would harm and may jeopardize our ability to receive our monies that we get every year for early childhood development. So to cure that or make that problem go away, they asked us to do a few things. The first thing was to apologize to the Children's Center. So I made a phone call to Susan Johnson, who happens to be here tonight. I told her on behalf of the town of New Milford, I'd like to apologize to you, and that we will make sure that that the personal information that is given to the town will be secure, will not be given to newspapers, and will not be used in a way that does not conform to the grant that we receive from the state. So again, Ms. Johnson, I'd like to apologize to you and your parents that go to the Children's Center. So I apologize from the town again. We also sent a letter to the News Times and asked them if they do have any of the information to then destroy it. So we were very happy to receive a letter back from Early Childhood Development saying that we have fulfilled our obligation and we are no longer in harm of losing that grant. So that's the good news. Again, I wanted to apologize, and now we move forward. Any questions? Thank you. Next, Chamber of Commerce. Discussion and possible action regarding road closure requests for the 2018 calendar year.
I motion that we waive the reading and move that we close as per A, B, and C for the Chamber of Commerce for the Southern Cross for the fireworks celebration, Fair Days, and also Festival of Lights in November.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, appointments, reappointments to boards and commissions. Do I have a motion for the library modernization and construction? Yes, sir.
No one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, are you going to do them separately?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, I move that we handle the the appointment for the Library Modernization and Construction Committee to run from January 8th, 2018 through July the 9th, 2018, as this is a temporary committee. And that would be for the following, as listed. Are you fine with that, Peter, if I do it as listed on the agenda?
Can I just say, you said the 9th, I mean, on my thing it says the 6th.
Yeah, right.
It's supposed to be the 9th?
We double checked it.
With the town clerk, and they
it
changed
should be
their
the
dates
9th.
for us.
We have some copies for you if you like.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that was a clerical change. So all the members as listed on the agenda would be appointed for this committee from today, the 8th of January, through the 9th of July.
2018.
2018.
Any discussion on the motion?
Wait a second. We need a second.
Okay.
Who seconded it? Did someone second it?
Somebody said, Doug, you said.
Doug did?
This is just library.
Yep. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I move that we do the following for the Sewer Commission. We have a reappointment of Frank Bedetti, December 1st, 2017 through November 30th of 2021. An appointment of Gary Hita, who's filling a vacancy. His term would be January 8th, 2018 through November 30th of 2021. Appointment of John Learson, who's replacing Gary Pfaff. He would run from January 8th, 2018 through November 30th, 2019. And the appointment of Gary Pfaff as an alternate, his term running January 8th, 2018 through November 30th, 2021.
I have a second. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I move for the Board of...
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Go right ahead. Sure. Go.
You can't reappoint Mohammed R. Karim to the Board of Finance. He's an elected official.
He was elected?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
So I don't know who put this name here, but obviously you can't be on 2 elected boards.
No.
What's he on?
I'm sorry, Board of Assessment Appeals?
I think
Yep. Is that what?
Right.
I think it's Board of Assessment
Do
Appeals.
we perhaps have the wrong person on there?
So,
Yeah, that's got something.
Matt?
Dr. Mullen is correct. Nobody can be on 2 elected boards. However, I will advise the council that they only have control over the alternate appointments to the Board of Finance, and I do not believe the charter precludes appointments as alternates. If it was a regular position, then yes, he could not be on 2 boards. But the agenda does not say alternates, but I think that that's what the council intends.
Thank you.
We need to...
Wait a second.
Here's your... That's the amended. That does say alternate. I wasn't looking at it.
Yeah, but an alternate gets to vote. See, how do you justify that?
Matt, what section is it?
It's not, it's actually, Councilman Nahom, it is actually a state statute. I don't have the specific reference, but no person can hold 2 elected municipal offices. A Board of Finance alternate is not an elected municipal office, and an alternate can only vote when a regular member is not present and he or she has been designated by the chair of that board or commission to vote in that regular member's place.
So with that in mind, How does Mr. Kareem feel about it? Does he feel strongly about being on both?
Well, if it's the council's pleasure, we can just defer to that one and then bring it back at the next meeting. If we want to do that, if everyone feels comfortable doing that, we can do that.
No, I do not feel comfortable doing that, but thank you for asking.
Certainly.
He wasn't the name recommended by the DTC. I sent the name to the mayor's office on Wednesday, that we'd asked for. And Mohammed is a dear friend of mine. And if you asked him to serve, I'm sure he would. But that's not the issue here. The issue is the DTC put forward another name, which was forwarded to the mayor's office, and I still have a concern with a person on 2 elected positions. Because they get to vote periodically. So I would like at the next meeting to bring up the name that I sent to you, Mayor.
So first we have this name that's forward. It's here. This is the name that's here. I did speak to Kareem before the election and then right after the election because he did come to our hearing and he was interested in the position. Now, maybe his thoughts have changed, and depending on how this council feels, we can revisit it. Or if it's the council's pleasure, and they'd like to vote on this name tonight, you can do so. It's your pleasure.
I don't want to vote. I would like to do more research, and I'd also like to know, I mean, I guess I should know the policy. If the Democrat's being appointed, isn't the Democrat town committees, providing it's an upstanding member of society, isn't it the Democratic decision of who they want to put as their alternate?
There's been precedent for both. So there's been precedent where you've taken that, and there's been precedent where you have not.
So at least, right, and the very beginning, when the first meeting we had talking about the board, you broke the precedent. You said you will not put anybody up if you don't get elected next time. So I don't want to care about the precedent. I want to do what's right.
Correct.
And so I feel that if the Democrats put someone up as an upstanding member of society, and that's what the Democrats decide they want, I think that's the direction we should take. I don't know the whole background to it, but it just seems, I mean, the whole Democrats, it just seems strange to me that it's becoming this. And if the Democrats are putting someone else and we're putting another Democrat up, I think that decision needs to get ironed out before we get here. This is my personal opinion.
So I just want to be clear, Mr. Mullins' argument is that the reason why you don't want him appointed is because he can't be on 2 elected.
A couple of reasons.
Okay. Well, that's the one that you stated.
One reason is, I'm still of the opinion I understand the alternate argument.
Okay.
Okay. But conceptually, you shouldn't be on 2 elected boards at the same time.
So
it's different. You're on Park and Rec. That's an appointed position. Okay. There's a lot of appointed positions people volunteer for. But as an elected, I can't accept that concept, even if it is an alternate, because you get to vote periodically. I just think it's wrong. But secondly, and back to your point, Michael, years ago, it was a courtesy for the minority party at this table that they put a name forward and, that person was accepted. There has been some animosity over the years on some of these issues, but that's what it used to be. So, it's not the name that the DTC put forward.
So that's more your argument than...
That's my number one argument. And my second argument is still a conceptual one, though it might be allowed. I mean, alternate may be allowed. I understand it. I still don't think it's right.
So Walter will pull this name off and we'll revisit the next meeting.
I'm with Mike and I'm with Dr. Mullen. I'd like to revisit this.
And the second appointment. Do we have a motion for that?
Yes, so I would move that we, for the appointment of Steve Confortini as an alternate filling a vacancy for Board of Finance, his term would run January 8th, 2018 through November 30th, 2019.
Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Anything else to come before?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.